with me that it should not be the policy of the United States to do it.
But in your question, you're suggesting there is such a policy. I'm telling you there is no such policy.
Well, if there is no such policy, then I presume you would investigate it.
When I see the lawsuit, I'm just not familiar with it. We will, of course, do what's appropriate.
But you'd agree with me that it would be wrong.
That it would be wrong, meaning it would be wrong to send somebody home to be tortured. Yes.
Let me ask you about allegations in connection with David Gentili. I think we talked about these allegations when you visited me. Thank you for coming to my office. In May of 2025, David Gentili was sentenced to 7 years in prison for his role in an almost $1.8 billion Ponzi-like scheme that defrauded over 10,000 investors, many of them middle-class retirees, of their hard-earned savings, and he was imprisoned. He boasted to fellow inmates and others that he was going to be released because he paid $2.5 million for clemency. Evidence collected by the Eastern District of New York supported those allegations and reportedly also included statements by Father Frank Mann that he spoke to the president about David Gentili. The Eastern District of New York was investigating these allegations and reportedly received a call from one of your top deputies instructing them about the concerns of the Department of Justice. The investigation was stopped by the Eastern District of New York. I wrote to you on June 23rd and United States Attorney Joseph Nacella about these allegations that an investigation into this impropriety was shut down at the request of your office. Did you have any involvement or knowledge about the commutation of Mr. Gentili's sentence?
President Trump, as I've said a couple times today, has full authority to pardon or commute anybody convicted of federal crime.
That's not my question.
So I'm answering your question, Senator.
Did you
I'm answering your question. What my communications with President Trump, I will not talk about. He does not, nor should he. He has no obligation to discuss pardon or commutation decisions with me, and he has not. As far as what you just suggested about an investigation, I believe you're referring to a news article that was the result of apparent leaks, and I would caution that there's falsehoods in those news articles.
I'm asking you whether you had any involvement in commuting that sentence or in stopping the investigation into the allegations of impropriety, possibly payment to Father Frank Mann.
And I answered the first question, but when you say stopping an investigation, there's an assumption built into your question that I will not concede. We will not talk about whether investigations exist or don't exist, and certainly some leak about something that we supposedly did doesn't warrant an answer either.
There was an investigation, correct?
That's my whole point in saying is that there's an assumption baked into your question that I don't think is true, meaning that we cannot comment on even the existence of investigations like that.
You commented this morning to Republican colleagues about several investigations.
No, I haven't.
Well, you commented in response to the chairman about the FISA investigation.
About the what? Excuse me?
The investigation that he asked you about.
So, Senator, my point is that you're asking me questions about a news article, the source of which was apparently leaks. It would be inappropriate for me as the acting attorney general to comment on such leaks or news articles that you're referencing. But
I accept that you're not going to answer my question, but I think there is a need for the Inspector General to look into the investigation that was apparently, according to these articles and other information, stopped as a result of your intervention. Let me move on. In 2017, more than 10,000 9/11 victims filed suit against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That lawsuit is heading to trial. information was promised by President Trump in September of 2019. That information has not been provided. Will you commit to meet with those families and provide the information they need for their lawsuit?
Folks from my office have met with the representatives of those families. We will commit to continuing to have communications, of course.
And provide the information they're seeking?
Well, you're saying, I don't know what the information is you're talking about. So obviously I can't just commit to providing the information.
Well, let's talk about other information. Information about the Epstein abuses. Your predecessor apologized to the Epstein survivors with good reason, because as you've said today, mistakes were made. I'm asking you today, with Epstein survivors in this room, to apologize to them.
Well, so my heart breaks for every victim of any sexual crime, whether it's involving Mr. Epstein or somebody else. And so if you're asking me to apologize that this happened to them, of course, absolutely. This is a horrible thing, which is why this Department of Justice, this administration is focused very heavily on going after these predators. And so, yes, of course, that's part of my job, is being empathetic to the victims of crime.
Will you apologize to them for the mishandling and mistakes that were made by the United States Department of Justice?
I will absolutely say that any mistake that we made should not have been made. And I very much, I can answer the question, or you can just interrupt me, Senator, but I am answering your question. I very much and I have said this to anybody that asks, and publicly before, any mistake that was made is not appropriate. And so, yes, I am sorry that in about 1% of the documents, mistakes were made. But what I will say on top of that is we put tons of resources to rectifying those mistakes immediately, including pulling down documents within minutes of being informed that there were mistakes, potential mistakes made, and working 24/7 to rectify any mistakes. And that's what I would expect the victims would want us to do, and their counsel, and this body as well.
And you would agree with me, wouldn't you, that you can well meet with any of the survivors or victims with their counsel present? You said you can't meet with them, but you could meet with them if they're.
I never said I can't meet with them. I said if they were represented, I had to meet through counsel. But of course, I can meet with them. I'm the acting Attorney General of the United States, so yes, I can. I very strongly believe that if for these victims to tell their stories and the evidence that they have, they should meet, like any victim of a crime, with the FBI or a law enforcement agent, and that we will do everything we can to prosecute if we can.
The judge in Florida referred your misconduct. She concluded that there was misconduct and misrepresentation and improper purpose in that legal action to the Bar of New York for potential discipline, including losing your law license. I know you disagree with the result of the ruling. Has that kind of referral ever happened by a federal judge for an Attorney General of the United States?
I don't know, but I'll tell you something. That judge never asked us to respond. She never gave us an opportunity to respond to anything. And she didn't refer me. She just asked that a copy of the order be provided to the New York Bar, because there's several activist groups that have filed complaints against me. So listen, as I've said earlier, I think anybody on this committee, especially the lawyers that have practiced, can read that opinion and reach their own conclusions. But I very much disagree with the judge's insinuations about me. And we're going to do what we can to make that right.
One last question. Would you agree with me that agents of the United States should not fire into cars fire their weapons into cars unless there is an imminent threat?
Give a short answer to that.
There's a well-established standard as to when an agent can discharge their firearm, and I think that's something that should be followed in every case.
And that includes not firing weapons into cars.